Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel today. I'm going to tell you a story that will remind you that kindness never goes unnoticed. Even when we think no one is watching, this story begins in a small cozy breakfast diner tucked between a laundromat and an old bookstore. It wasn't a fancy place, but it had the kind of warmth you could feel as soon as you stepped inside, the smell of freshly brewed coffee, the soft clinking of plates, and the hum of morning conversations. It was the kind of spot where locals gathered every day before heading off to work. In the heart of that diner was a young waitress named Emily. Emily had been working there for 3 years. She wasn't rich, she didn't come from a perfect family. She lived in a small apartment shared with her younger sister and worked double shifts just to make ends meet. But despite her struggles, she carried a smile that seemed to brighten the room every morning. She had a way of remembering everyone's orders and everyone's stories. She wasn't just serving breakfast, she was serving comfort to people who needed a tone-cold Wednesday morning. The door to the diner opened, and an old man walked in. He looked frail, his back slightly hunched, his hands trembling as he gripped his wooden cane. He moved slowly, as if every step took effort. His clothes were clean but worn, his gray beard untrimmed, and his eyes tired, yet gentle. Emily noticed him immediately because he didn't look like the usual customers. He didn't walk with the air of someone who had a routine here. He walked like someone who didn't know where else to go. She approached him with her usual warmth, asking if he wanted a booth or a table, but the old man just whispered softly, "A booth, please." She guided him to one near the window and asked what she could get him to eat. "Just coffee," he murmured. "I don't have much money." It wasn't said with shame, it was said with acceptance, as if life had taught him not to expect too much. But something in Emily's heart ached. She couldn't ignore the loneliness in his voice, so she smiled and said, "Don't worry about that, I got you. How about some breakfast too?" He hesitated, but she reassured him, and that day she gave him a full breakfast. Hot pancakes, eggs, toast, fruit, all on her own bill. He tried to refuse, but she placed the plate in front of him, gently insisting everyone deserves a warm meal, especially in the morning. From that day on, the old man became a regular. He came every morning, just as the diner opened, always sitting at the same booth, always ordering the same coffee, and always smiling. When Emily approached him, his name was Arthur, and at first he didn't talk much, but slowly, day by day, he began to open up. Emily learned that Arthur lived alone. His wife had passed away many years ago, and he had no children, no close relatives. He lived in a small rented room, surviving on a tiny pension. He had worked most of his life as a mechanic, but now age had slowed him down, and the loneliness was harder than the pain in his bones. Emily listened to him every morning. She didn't just nod politely, she really listened, and Arthur felt something he hadn't felt in years. Someone cared, someone asked about his day, someone remembered how he liked his coffee, someone saw him not as a burden, not as an invisible old man, but as a human being with a lifetime of memories. She kept bringing him breakfast even when he insisted he could not repay her, but she didn't want anything in return. This was her choice, her kindness, her humanity. On morning, however, Arthur didn't come in. Emily kept glancing at the door, expecting him to walk through it at any moment. Minutes turned into an hour, and she felt a strange heaviness in her stomach. Arthur wasn't the type to change his routine suddenly, especially without telling her. The next morning, he still didn't come. She grew even more worried. On the third day, she asked her manager if she could step out for a few minutes, and she went to check the small rooming house where Arthur lived. But when she arrived, she found the landlady standing outside. With a sad expression, she told Emily that Arthur had collapsed 2 days ago and was taken to the hospital. Emily rushed straight to the hospital, her apron still on her hands, slightly shaking with fear. When she reached his room, she saw Arthur lying in a hospital bed hooked to machines, his face pale and eyes closed. She walked quietly to his side, gently calling his name. His eyes fluttered open, and when he saw her, he managed a weak smile. "You came," he whispered. She nodded, fighting tears of relief. "Of course I did. You scared me, Arthur." He chuckled softly, then winced in pain. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. "I've just gotten old, that's all." Doctors said he had severe dehydration and malnutrition. His heart was weak, his body fragile. It shocked Emily, because she had no idea things were that bad. She thought the breakfasts she gave him were helping. She didn't know how much he was suffering alone. She held his hand and told him he wasn't alone anymore, and from that day she visited him every single day during her breaks, after her shifts, even on her days off. She brought him homemade soup, read him stories, listened to him talk about his life. She became the daughter he never had, and he became the grandfather she wished she had. Growing UPA. Month passed, and slowly Arthur got better. The doctor said he could be discharged soon, but he would still need care. Emily knew she couldn't afford to help him financially, nor could she take him home, but she promised him she would never abandon him. She told him that no matter what, he would always have someone who cared for him. And Arthur's eyes filled with tears because he had lived so long believing he would die alone, but now he had someone who saw value in Hyman. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a quiet morning. The diner was half empty. Emily was serving a table when the front door suddenly opened. 4 large men in black suits walked in, their presence instantly catching the eye of everyone inside. They moved with surprising coordination, and behind them walked two lawyers carrying briefcases. Everyone went silent, even Emily froze for a moment. One of the lawyers looked around, then asked loudly, "Is Miss Emily here?" Her heart skipped, she raised her hand and stepped closer, wondering if this was some sort of mistake. The lawyer then said, "We represent Mr. Arthur Summers, and we need to speak with you privately." She felt confused. Her first thought was that something terrible had happened to Arthur. She followed them to a quiet corner of the diner, her hands slightly trembling. Then the second lawyer spoke calmly. "Arthur has been transferred to a private medical facility this morning. Don't worry, he is stable and receiving excellent care." Emily felt relief wash over her, but also confusion. She wondered who paid for it because Arthur had no money. Then, the lawyer continued, "And Mr. Summers also gave us instructions to give you something today." He opened his briefcase and took out a sealed envelope. Emily stared at it, her mind spinning. What was going on? The lawyer handed it to her and said these were his exact wishes with shaky fingers. She opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from Arthur. She recognized his shaky handwriting, and tears already filled her eyes before she even began reading it. The letter said, "My dear Emily, if you are reading this, it means my time is near. Whether I have days, months, or years left, I wanted to make sure you knew the truth. I did not come into your diner by accident. I came because I was lost, forgotten, and ready to give up. But you saved me. You gave me kindness when the world had given me nothing for a long time. You made an old man feel alive again. You treated me like family, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. You never asked for anything, and maybe that is why I chose you. I have something to confess, Emily. I was not always a poor mechanic. I once owned several businesses, but after my wife died, I shut everything down and disappeared from that world. I didn't want the money. I didn't want the responsibility. I didn't want anything but peace. I lived simply because I thought no one needed me anymore. But then I met you. The world needs people like you. Emily, your heart is pure, your kindness is rare, and I want to help you the way you helped me in my will. I have named you as the primary beneficiary. My lawyers will explain everything, but please know, this is not charity, this is gratitude. You gave me dignity, warmth, and love when you didn't have to. Thank you for being my angel." Emily gasped, tears streaming down her face. She felt her knees weaken, and one of the lawyers gently helped her sit down. The 4 bodyguards stood silently nearby, watching over everything with quiet professionalism. The lawyer then said, "Mr. Summers has left you his house, his savings, and full ownership of a small business he still had under his name. The business had been closed for years, but it was fully paid for and worth a significant amount." Emily stared at him in disbelief, shaking her head, saying she didn't deserve any of that, but the lawyer simply replied, "Mr. Summers insisted," he said. "You saved his life in ways medicine never could, and this was the only way he could repay you." She cried right there in the diner. Customers watching in confusion but also curiosity. She didn't cry because of the money, or the house, or the business. She cried because a lonely old man had loved her like family, and she never even knew how much she truly meant to him. She cried because kindness had come back to her in the most unexpected way. She cried because Arthur, who had so little in life, had given her everything. He had left after she calmed down. The lawyers told her that the bodyguards were there because Arthur wanted to make sure she felt safe, protected, and respected during this moment. He told them to treat her as if she were his own granddaughter. Emily covered her face, overwhelmed by emotion. That evening she visited Arthur in the private care facility. When he saw her, his eyes softened. She hugged him tightly, crying into his shoulder and saying, "You didn't have to do any of this." Arthur smiled weakly. "Yes, I did. You gave me hope. Emily, you reminded me that life still had meaning. I wanted to give you something back," he whispered. Stayed by his side, holding his hand, and in that quiet room they talked for hours. But this time it wasn't the old stories of his past, it was the future. She told him her dreams, how she wanted to finish school, maybe start a small cafe of her own someday, but she never had the money or time. Now she did all because of him. He smiled and told her to chase those dreams, not just for herself but for him too. He told her he believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. In the weeks that followed, Arthur's health remained fragile, but his heart was at peace. Emily visited him every single day, just like before. She brought him flowers, helped him eat, walked with him in the garden. She used the money he left her to restart the small business he had given her. She opened a little cafe dedicated to him and named it Arthur's Morning Light. She hung his picture on the wall with a small plaque that read, "For the man who taught me that kindness returns when you least expect it." The cafe quickly became popular, not because of fancy decorations or expensive food, but because of the warmth it carried. The same warmth Emily once gave Arthur. She hired staff, paid them well-treated, elderly customers with special care, and offered free meals to anyone who needed them. People walked in not just for food, but for comfort and connection. Just like Arthur had once done. Whenever someone asked her how she managed to open the cafe, she simply said, "A friend believed in me, and that was enough." And she meant it, because everything she did in honor of the man who changed her life by letting her change his. As for Arthur, he lived long enough to see pictures of her cafe long enough To see her succeed long enough to know he had left the world a little brighter because of her when he eventually passed away. Emily held his hand until his last breath, whispering, "Thank you for finding me," and that is the story of how a simple waitress changed a lonely old man's life and how he changed hers in return, reminding us all that no act of kindness is ever wasted. Someone is always watching, someone is always grateful, someone always remembers. So if you ever feel like your kindness doesn't matter, think of Emily. Think of Arthur, and remember that even the smallest gesture can create a miracle you never saw coming. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional and inspiring stories just like this one. See you in the next video.